let's get into it because the SEC dropped some big news today. That they're going to be moving over to a 9-game conference schedule. This is something that SEC fans have been saying, why would we ever do that? Everyone else outside is making a big fuss saying, well, you need to because we are. And I'll get to all of that. But of course, this big news came in college football today with specifically SEC fans being affected by this, that they made this big move. They're going to be moving to pretty much changing the landscape of the sport the way that it stands right now. And there will be no more question marks of whose schedule is tougher. And there will be no more question marks of, if the SEC is getting an advantage by only having 8 conference games and playing some of these FCS schools, all of that. There is no more debate. The SEC now has a very tough schedule ahead of them. Starting in 2026, Commissioner Greg Sankey announced that the SEC will officially move to a 9-game conference schedule and 9 SEC games. As if Oklahoma's schedule wasn't tough enough, they said, hey, guess what? We're going to make it even tougher. And so, of course, not just Oklahoma either. You look over at just about any team in the SEC and the tough schedules that they go through. There are some that have it easier than others. I think if you look around, one that comes to the top of my head, I think Tennessee has a more favorable, it's not easy, but it's a more favorable schedule than some. Quick break in the action. Make sure you hit that like button and make sure you are subscribed. If you want to support the channel a little bit further, jump down to the link down in the description below and make sure you become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. We're going to offer so much more for our members, but we're still going to keep all of the same old content. All of this content is still going to be brought to you guys, but just a little bit extra for our members. Let's get back to the action. And there's many others, but now with 9 SEC teams that you have to go against each year, it's going to be difficult. So not only that, but you also add in the requirement for each team to schedule at least one high-quality non-conference opponent. So it has to be a team from the ACC, the Big Ten, the Big 12, or Notre Dame. So pretty much a Power 4 program or Notre Dame. And so you've got one of the toughest schedules in all of college football already, but now you make it even worse when you now add this into the mix. And so, it's going to be a very tough schedule ahead. So for Oklahoma fans, if you're an SEC fan of any SEC school, it's going to be fun. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, to see how this all goes. Now, here's how it's going to work. Let's break down the structure, and don't worry about rivalries. Those will still be here because the SEC, they're going to stick with that single standings, non-divisional structure, which I personally enjoy because then you don't have one division running the other. You saw that with pretty much any conference that had that division set up. They always had one division really taking it all. Ohio State, Michigan on that side of the bracket. Whoever won the big game there, that was the one that was going to take it all in the Big Ten. And then, the East running it for the SEC for a long time. And, it was all over the place. And so I do like the non-divisional structure. That is what the SEC is keeping to. Each school is going to play 3 annual programs. So 3 annual opponents. And that's what I want to hear from you guys. Who would you like those 3 annual opponents to be? Because we'll go through some of those and who they might be. So, you don't have to worry about it. They're also going to preserve some of the traditional rivalries that we all love. Of course, there's some of those non-traditional rivalries that are going to be taken away possibly, because you think of some of the obvious ones, Auburn, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, all of those are going to stay there, but maybe that Oklahoma Mizzou isn't there anymore, which I'm sure that's probably going to be there for a regional game. But, maybe the Oklahoma Tennessee, I think that's been a fun little rivalry. It's been a pleasurable rivalry, if you would say that. So, I think that's going to be interesting. So the other 6 games, you've got 3 annual games. You will always play those 3 teams every single year, no matter what. Now, the other 6 games, they're going to rotate across the conference. So this means that every team will play every other SEC program at least once every 2 years. Your home and home matchups, it's going to kind of happen all within 4 years. So no more decade-long waits to see certain matchups. You're going to see them regularly. It's just not as regular as it normally would be. So, that's kind of the thing there. Now, the impact on the SEC that this gives, of course, this is massive for the league and really all of college football, because with the SEC, it's already been known for its depth. The SEC fans have already been arguing this point that the SEC is deeper. And I made this same argument here on the show. If I were to give you the 4 bottom feeders of any other conference, and then the 4, I'm saying quote unquote bottom feeders, because every year it's different. For the Big Ten, for example, would you rather get the, every once in a while get scheduled Maryland and Rutgers, Northwestern, Purdue, Indiana on most years, although Indiana, got to give them props where it's due. They look like they might have something figured out with Kurt Signetti. We'll see. But, overall, would you rather that kind of a schedule lineup in the Big Ten, or would you rather playing against Mississippi State, and hearing the cowbells ringing? If you were to go on the road, which environments would threaten you more? Which ones would you feel like you had less of a shot? Going on the road to Kentucky at night is not an easy task. But they're not a top dog in the SEC. I'd say that they're one of the bottom teams in the SEC. Even Auburn on their down years. Would you really want to go? Do you really go down through that schedule, even for Oklahoma, and just say, Oklahoma taking on Auburn last year, for example, Oklahoma going to Jordan-Hare, we got this locked up in the bag? No, that's not the case. And that would just be silly to think that way. And so I think that overall, the SEC does have a fuller and a deeper, more talented overall than any conference out there. Now, it's not to take anything away. The top talent in the ACC and the top talent in the Big Ten is just as good as some of the top talent in the SEC, not taking that away from any other conference. They're also great. But anyways, looking at that, the SEC, it already has that difficult schedule, but now this format guarantees. This is a good thing and a bad thing for fans that don't want to see those marquee matchups, because it gives you a little bit of a heart attack. Guess what? There's going to be way more must-watch games, must-see games every single weekend. So fans really win. Players get to showcase themselves against the best of the best, the cream of the crop. The SEC has all of those great environments, which means you get to add one more to your schedule every single year. So, there's a lot of good to come from this for sure. It's a win for the fans and the playoff committee. They're going to have a lot to look at with quality wins and strength of schedule debates to sift through. And this is going to strengthen the SEC even more, where guess what? That this could lead to SEC teams having an even stronger case to make their debates and to fight their debates for why their team deserves to be in the college football playoffs. So, buckle up. 2026 is right around the corner, really. And, the SEC is really going to set the standard for college football. And, I want to hear what you guys think of this. Does a 9-game SEC schedule make the road to the national championship even more grueling, even tougher, or is this kind of the perfect balance of kind of tradition and competitiveness? I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether you like this, whether you hate this. And I do want to make this note as well, because a lot of people are saying, yeah, but our conference is playing 9 games, so your conference ought to play 9 games as well. Now, this was really a relatively new concept to go to 9 games. Starting off with the Pac-12 that started this back in 2006. That's not that long ago. It's 19 years ago, but it's really not that long ago. Ahead of the 2026 season, that's whenever they started and kind of expanded to the Pac-12. And so they took on 9 games. The Big 12 took this on in 2011. So I believe that would have been the year after Nebraska left, if I'm remembering that correctly. So, in 2011, Colorado and Nebraska left at that point. Colorado went to the Pac-12, Nebraska went to the Big 10. So that's, again, not that long ago. And even more recently, the Big Ten just took this up in 2016, only 9 years ago. The fact that, of course, in 2014, I think is whenever the Big Ten added Maryland and Rutgers, and so then they divided it into the East and West. I think for a while they had it Legends and what were the 2 groups they had their divisions named up. But anyways, they had theirs divided into East and West there. Because of that. And so, there's all kinds of, this is a new concept. That's my point. This is a fairly new concept. The Big Ten just took this on 9 years ago. That's not that incredibly long ago. Now, the SEC was just saying, hey, this has been tradition. Why are we messing with this? And they've been arguing that point for such a long time. And I don't think that's really argued that way often enough, but it is. It's a tradition that we're trying to screw with the schedules. Why would we bump that up? Of course, yeah, okay, well, we now have 16 teams in conferences rather than just maybe 8 to 12 that they were before. Okay, but why does that make it any different? Why should that affect the SEC? Because every other conference changed. You get where I'm coming with this. I just think that that's kind of ridiculous to sit here and expect one conference to change just because the other 3 did. You know, the other 4 did, I guess. You know, at one point there were 4 others, but this is where it's gone to. And so now the SEC will take on that 9-game conference schedule, and again, keeping 3 annual opponents and then jumping around to the others. So again, let me know what you think those 3 annual opponents ought to be for the Sooners. I'd love to hear your comments down in the comments down below. If you liked this video, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. If you want to support this channel, keep on growing, and for more to be offered to you, become a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. That's as cheap as, honestly, cheaper than just grabbing a coffee down at the coffee shop each day. So go down there, down below. $2.99 a month is what we start off our memberships, and it will help us keep on growing and offering you more and more content as we grow. Of course, make sure you're subscribed, and that link is down in the description below to become a member today to help us keep on growing. We'll see you next time. Boomer.